Welcome to another installment of Deconstructing Babylon, where we discern the signs and symbols of the mystery religion of Hollywood Babylon. I'm the Discerning Clerk, and I use a biblical framework to deconstruct my favorite movies from the 90s.
Noticed your eyeglasses. They don't have any lenses in them.
They're my dad's. The lenses hurt my eyes.
Today's selection happens to be a recommendation from one of you, the viewers, and thank you. I'm so incredibly grateful for your continued support. I've said it before, but I know how niche my content is. Most people find themselves as either pro-Hollywood cinephiles, self-proclaimed movie nerds, or so anti-Hollywood that they avoid big blockbuster movies altogether. Either way, my takes tend to insult both groups somehow. I love movies, and I always have, but I don't trust the stories, images, or symbolism Hollywood puts out anymore. My trust is in Yahweh alone, and I hope that by sharing what I see here, you see it too, and you grow in your discernment, not just with movies you watch, but in all areas. Until Messiah returns and rules and reigns as king over all, God's word tells us that Satan is the prince of this world, and he will do whatever he can to deceive, distract, and destroy Yahweh's creation. And I always say to know the word for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. The Mask was released in 1994, a massive year for star Jim Carrey, who also came out with Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and the final season of In Living Color that same year. The Video Movie Guide gives it 4 stars and says this: a good-hearted, put-upon bank employee discovers a mask that sets free his inhibitions and gives him eye-popping magical powers. Star Jim Carrey does a marvelous job in this cartoon-style film that pays homage to the groundbreaking animated shorts made at Warner Brothers and MGM by Tex Avery and Bob Clampett. Model-turned-actress Cameron Diaz is a real knockout in her first role, even keeping pace with the rubber-legged Carrey in a dance sequence that has to be seen to be believed. Rated PG-13. The Mask isn't an original character, but is a dark horse comic series that is much more sinister than the movie turned out to be, as the role was written specifically for the flexible funny man. As such, I'm sure there will be quite a bit of symbolism to see here. So, let's see what we see in The Mask. The movie begins on the shoreline of the fictional dystopian urban center, Edge City. Underwater explorers uncover a barely hidden chest, and a seeming benign wooden mask is revealed inside. It floats to the surface after who knows how long being underwater. Now we meet the good-hearted, put-upon bank employee, Stanley Ipkiss, who keeps a stack of Looney Tunes comic books in his desk drawer. He presents a pair of tickets to a red-headed co-worker expecting a date with her, but she has no intention of dating this man that she clearly just takes advantage of.
Stanley, you are the nicest guy.
Stanley's friend and co-worker, Charlie, tries to encourage the recently rebuffed clerk, offering a night out at a local hotspot.
Trust me, buddy, this is going to be the perfect night on the town.
Then the bombshell Tina Carlisle comes into the bank, escaping the sudden storm, and she sits down with Stanley to open a new account.
That's an interesting time, Mr.
Ipkiss. Stanley Ipkiss.
Tina Carlisle, pleased to meet you.
The tie was intentional. The graphic print in dual black and white, and she goes on to compare the design to the psychologist's tool, the Rorschach test. These are predictive ink blots to determine personality and even underlying thought disorders.
Sort of a Lady Godiva or something.
Lady Godiva is somewhat a legendary figure. There may or may not have been a young noblewoman who persuaded her husband's generosity to local churches and monasteries. The naked horse ride was said to be in protest to her husband's taxation, but no one was to witness her nakedness. Yet one did, a man by whom we get the name Peeping Tom. In this case, Tina is less likened to Lady Godiva and more so Peeping Tom, as her purse is outfitted with a camera fixed firmly on the bank vault. The camera feed is going to our main villain, Dorian Tyrell, and his scary henchmen. They are planning a bank heist, as bad guys in 90s movies often do. Stanley and Charlie make it to the nightclub, and lo and behold, bad guy Dorian is the club owner or manager. Unfortunately, Stanley doesn't make it in with his friend, and he runs into bombshell Tina on her way in. Unsurprisingly, Tina now wears a dual black and white dress.
You're driving in a Porsche.
Stanley's loaner car literally falls apart on a bridge, and Stanley sees a face in the water. He jumps in, trying to be a hero, and he finds the mask from the opening.
I'm just looking for my mask. I got it.
Once at home, we see that Stanley has a dog, a very smart, very high-maintenance breed, Jack Russell, named Milo. Now, we know a dog in a movie is God to the director or associated characters, as Hollywood Babylon loves to use the occultic law of reversal, where a dog is God. It's a mocking counterfeit. Here, as Stanley's pet, he values the small breed, whose name is associated with the military boundary in the city of David. Stanley has a checkerboard floor in his apartment, because of course, and framed prints of Porky Pig and Daffy Duck above his bed, which has red and blue bed sheets. More duality. I'd even wager the animated characters represent duality, with one clean animal and one unclean.
We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking. We suppress the id, our darkest desires, and adopt a more socially acceptable image.
This seems to be the ultimate theme of the movie, that we ought not to suppress our true identity, and that this mysterious mask, in fact, negates our metaphorical mask and instead reveals who we truly are. Stanley mistakenly believes that his dog, Milo, likes the mask he brought home, when clearly Milo is, at the very least, suspicious of it. Stanley then stands in front of a mirror with the mask, and it is typically the mirror we see as the symbol for the inner man. But when Stanley puts on the mask, it becomes a part of him, transforming him into the green-faced, cartoonish character.
Spoken!
The color the mask becomes is one I've often referred to as Disney villain green, as Disney animated films always use this particular shade to associate with a villain or identify the presence of evil. And the Bible talks about this color present in the throne room with the Most High. So when Hollywood Babylon uses it as often as they do, it seems a counterfeit of Yahweh and a mockery of holiness.
Look, Ma! I'm roadkill! Ha ha ha!
Stanley, as the mask, easily takes down some street thugs. He also seems to be invincible, the way cartoons are invincible. He realizes he could use these powers to do good in his crime-ridden city, but instead he'd rather get revenge on folks who have wronged him. The next morning, Stanley wakes up in his bed, believing it was all a dream, telling himself so in the mirror, telling his inner man. But that changes again when a police lieutenant shows up at his door.
Impossible.
Those pajamas are impossible. This actually happened.
Stanley decides the mask is trouble and tosses it out the window, but it magically boomerangs right back onto his pillow. At the garage, where the mask got some payback on some mechanics, we meet hard-nosed, red-haired reporter Peggy Brandt. Her interest in the case has to do with alleged mob ties, but investigators deflect that line of questioning. So she tracks down the garage's client list, which includes Stanley Ipkiss at the bank.
Stanley Ipkiss? Oh, hi. I'm Peggy Brandt from the Tribune.
Peggy realizes Stanley is a letter writer to her advice column as Mr. Nice Guy, and she confesses that she and hundreds of women in Edge City are looking for a nice guy just like Stanley. But his lived experience is that nice guys finish last. That night, he dreams about Tina and the nightclub interaction going much differently.
Car, sir.
This time, it is a Porsche 911 model, which is a direct reference to September 11th, 2001, and the destruction of the Twin Towers. Stanley believes that on his own, as a nice guy, someone like Tina would never go for him. But with the help of the bad boy mask, his alter ego could persuade her.
Hold on, sugar! Daddy's got a sweet tooth tonight!
This time, he wears another black and white dual tie and a bright yellow zoot suit that I believe is meant to be dualism with Tina's red dress from the bank. Speaking of the bank, Dorian's crew are moving on their heist plans.
The doctor is about to operate.
But they are thwarted in a sense because the mask has already beaten them to the vault contents. So with his pockets lined, he pulls up to the exclusive nightclub to woo the bombshell. He takes over the big band and the two dance to the delight of the audience. And critics too, I suppose. Meanwhile, Dorian's crew returns empty-handed and the so-called doctor dies from the shootout with the police. And the mask is fingered as the one who put a wrench in their plans. Which is when we learn that Tina is more than a sexy act at the club, she's also Dorian's girlfriend. So she does go for a bad boy. The crew clear out the club and open fire on the cartoon character, who we already know cannot die in the mask.
Tell Tawny Tim I won't be coming home this Christmas. Tell Scarlet I do give a damn.
IMDb tells me that Jim Carrey improvised almost all of his lines as the mask, and it makes sense. The lead investigator arrests Dorian for the bank robbery, but not for mischief or firing weapons in a public area. He then finds a clue that leads him back to Stanley's apartment.
There can't be two idiots with pajamas like these.
And Milo the dog threatens to out Stanley as the real bank robber. Lieutenant Calloway knows about the mask and questions Stanley about what he may know, as it was the bank where he works that was robbed.
You figure it was an inside job, huh?
Stanley is suspect number one, and the police investigate the open crime scene with all the employees there, and Tina returns, again in dual black and white with a red coat.
The guy they say robbed this place?
The mask.
I think he was at the club last night.
Stanley believes his moves as the mask worked to woo Tina when she invites him to meet her later that night. Stanley brings the mask to the archaeologist he saw on television in hopes to find out more about its origins.
4th or 5th century Scandinavian, possibly a representation of one of the Norse night gods, maybe Loki.
Yes, that Loki. Made infamous by Marvel Studios. Adopted son of Odin, brother to Thor.
Supposedly he caused so much trouble that Odin banished him from Valhalla forever.
So he was rebellious to his father and was sent away from his paradise home. Sound familiar? Stanley attempts to prove to the expert that the mask transforms him, but it doesn't work, because Loki is a night god, and he comes out only in the dark covering of night, I guess. Stanley shows up that night to meet Tina, and the police are hot on his trail. This time Tina isn't just in black and white, but a blatant checkerboard. Stanley ducks out so the mask can enter, and he makes even more forward moves with Tina, who doesn't seem to reciprocate this time.
She is so coy.
I love it!
The cops move in on the mask when he creates a massive diversion and manages to put everyone but Lieutenant Calloway into a trance and evades arrest. Reporter Peggy shows up in the nick of time and whisks him away from the scene.
What took you guys so long? I've been vamping here for like 20 minutes.
She set him up and double-crosses him to Dorian so she can get a payday. And when Dorian puts on the mischief mask, his alter ego is revealed, and he isn't a nice guy deep down. He's something far more sinister and dangerous. The bad guys go back to Stanley's apartment to get the money he stole from the bank before serving him up to the police. And it's Milo the dog to the rescue.
Get up here. That's it. You can do it. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Milo manages to get the keys for Stanley to break out of his jail cell, and this isn't the first time the dog has retrieved keys for his master. It makes me think of the one who holds the keys of the House of David, or the one who holds the key to the bottomless pit, who is Messiah. Meanwhile, Dorian has plans to infiltrate a charity gala, though who knows why. Municipal domination, perhaps? But he can't get it done as a regular menace. He's got to be transformed into the mask.
Sorry, we're already late for the ball.
Right. Alice and the White Rabbit are going to be really disappointed.
So that's an interesting reference. Alice was never late for a ball, and the White Rabbit was late for an appointment with the Queen of Hearts. But the reference to the Wonderland characters is a reference to drug-induced mind control. Alice, like Dorothy in Oz, is a popular image used by Hollywood Babylon as a pointer to MK Ultra and their tactics. A shootout ensues at the gala, and since Dorian wears the mask, he cannot die. Dorian plans to steal the charity money, blow up the club, and Tina along with it. Still have no idea why.
There's always time. One last kiss.
Milo sweeps in again to the rescue, and what happens when a tiny dog puts on the mischief mask? Finally, Stanley gets the mask back, and he swallows the TNT, saving everyone, but especially Tina.
That's a spicy meatball!
Dorian makes a final attempt to get Stanley, and is instead flushed down a drain. As the sun comes up on Edge City, Stanley vows to get rid of the mask, but it's Tina who tosses it back into the water from whence it came. Why doesn't it boomerang back this time? Milo and Charlie jump in after the mask and fight over the power it possesses. The last image is Stanley and Tina, who finally kiss on a bridge with the cityscape behind them. I often point out the black and white Freemason symbolism I see in films, because the Freemasons are the original builders of the nations, and they put their signature on everything. And it doesn't stop at black and white or checkerboards. We see it often with brick walls, the colors red and blue, and duality in many other forms, as I've spoken about previously. It is in the twin pillars in a Freemason temple that represent duality, and the twin towers that were famously brought down so many years ago. 9/11 is an infamous number because of it, and it is itself a perversion and counterfeit of the Day of Atonement spoken of in the Bible. 9/11 is believed by some, myself included, to be the true birthday of Messiah, and the time when he will return as the conquering king. This is fulfillment of prophecy, and the enemy knows that, which is why the day has been subverted for this generation. To be honest, I expected more COVID and pandemic programming to be present here because of the mask. Back in 2020, another year for dualism, we were told the mask would protect us, and then the vaccine, but I didn't see any of that here. It was all just duality. Stanley is dual in himself. He's Mr. Nice Guy, but deep down he's really a misogynist. The masked character wasn't a hopeless romantic, like he said. He wasn't chivalrous or kind in any way. He was a lawbreaker and objectified women, especially the one who was the object of his desire. It was Stanley without the mask who treated Tina with respect and dignity, but with the mask he sexually assaulted her, crossed her boundaries, and acted like an animal, like a wolf. But the often seen scenes with the mirror are the real duality, which means the mask didn't bring out one's true self. It brought out the false god for which it was fashioned, Loki, the god of mischief. Now, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong about this, Loki in the Marvel Cinematic Universe seems to represent the true Messiah more than any other character, because Hollywood always likes to villainize the Most High. He came to Earth not because he was banished from heaven, but because he had work to do and a role to fill as the Lamb. He performed signs and wonders and couldn't die unless he gave up his life. In The Mask, it seems like they also made the good guy the villain. Now, Dorian wasn't a good guy, but he didn't actually do anything wrong himself. Sure, he gave orders to his men to perform his dastardly deeds, but he never seemed to break the law himself. And like I said, putting on the mask didn't reveal the true nature of the man, but the false god. Now, I don't necessarily think that Dorian was the image of the Most High either. His name, Dorian Tyrell, gives me pause as it has E-L in his last name. But maybe it's a reference to the god of Tyre, or the Prince of Tyre. The king of Tyre was a man who made a deal with King David to provide all sorts of materials for his son Solomon to build the temple of Yahweh. Not only large trees for lumber, but there were several craftsmen and metalsmiths from Tyre who worked on building the temple. Tyre wasn't necessarily a place or people who worshipped Yahweh, and they are subject to his righteous judgment in the end. But neither were they a people who rejected him or went against him. So I don't know exactly what it means. Like I said, it gives me pause. Ultimately, I only saw duality in the costumes, in the characters, and the theme itself was even meant to convey that, though it fell quite short. They may have said Stanley was a nice guy over and over again, but he's the one who robbed a bank, assaulted 2 shady mechanics, destroyed public and private property, lied to the police, broke out of jail when he was guilty, killed his enemy, and was never really kind to the woman he only meant to objectify. He fooled everyone around him and got away with everything with 0 consequences. He really was a bad guy. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thank you for enduring to the end. Give the video a thumbs up if you agree and a thumbs down if you disagree. Comment below what you think I missed with this one and to suggest any 90s movies you'd like me to deconstruct in the future. Subscribe to the channel if you want to, but don't follow me. Follow the one who saves you. And until next time, keep looking up.
You were good, kid, real good. But as long as I'm around, you'll always be second best, see?